Good morning. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to the Influence live stream. Sorry. You think after all this time I would get the name straight, but hey, even now I still mess it up. Welcome to the Influence Livestream. We are so glad to have you with us this morning. Hey, we appreciate each and every one of you who come out and listen, whether it be you're watching from work, you're watching from home right now live, or maybe you're watching it back on the archive. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we also really like it when you like the video, when you subscribe to our channel. It really means a lot. And hey, leave a comment down there if you have any questions, or even just to say hi. We got Aaron Limbaugh, who's behind the camera right there, behind the computer, and we would just love to hear from you and just say hello this morning as we just talk a little bit. And today's going to be a little bit different. I hope that you enjoyed our last 3 weeks where we talked about peace, where we talked about Christ being the Prince of Peace. And then if God is a God of peace, where do we go from there? How do we live peaceful lives? What does this mean for war? What does this mean for police? What does this mean for all that? How do we approach that? And so if you haven't already watched those, hey, after you listen to this, just go back and watch those. And I think you would really, really benefit from those. So today is a little different. So as most of our people who watch and listen know, is I am transitioning out here at the Revival Center, and so we're going to be transitioning to a different work, and so we're going to be going overseas on the mission field. And so today is not the day where we're going to talk about that. I will sneak preview that after the first of the year, Gio and I will be coming on and kind of talking about that, giving you just some heads up and just some behind the scenes look at what we're going to be doing. But that's not what today is. Today, I just want to kind of take a moment of reflection in a way, talk about a few lessons that I've maybe learned along the way, encourage you, because these past 4 years have been a blast. They have been a ton of fun. And I've said this before, is that if you'd asked me 5-6 years ago if I would be at this moment right now, I would have never guessed that, right? And I think probably the majority of us in our lives go that way, is that, I would have never guessed that I would be at this moment with this job, or with these people, or, with this house, or whatever the case is. Life rarely works in the exact way that we have it planned out. And so, but it's been an amazing time. And, whenever Pastor Jason had reached out to myself and Gio about, that there was an open position of possibly coming up here, we were ecstatic. And so I don't know if I've ever told this story. I've told it to individuals, but I don't know if I've ever told this story on a podcast or on a live stream. And so, so Gio and I, we had only been married when Pastor Jason had first reached out. We'd only been married about 7 months at this point. So we are newlyweds. I was working a job back home in Enterprise, is where I'm from. And so Gio and I were living in this little one-bedroom apartment. And we look back on the times with great joy, but there was also difficulty in the sense that, especially with my job, the people there, I love them, I still do, but the work itself was just not my favorite. It was not enjoyable. I didn't have a passion for it. And so it was one of those things where I was working hard, I was doing my best, but I wasn't making a ton of money, and I wasn't in something that I loved. And when God lays a passion for something on your heart, you want to do it. You want to work in it as much as you can. And so we knew that God had laid on us a heart for ministry, and so we were serving in our local church in various capacities, and we had I was serving in the youth ministry as a volunteer. I was leading a youth small group. I was on the worship team and Gio so I was doing that a little bit before we got married, and then when Gio came along, she joined in on some of those things, and so we were serving. We had led a missions team to Costa Rica, and we had really in the church we were in, which are incredible people. We loved them dearly, but we had tried to kind of help more along the missions side, and for various reasons that didn't work. That didn't work out, and honestly, we were kind of discouraged because we had this passion within us, we had this desire within us to help with missions. We knew that missions was in our heart. It was what God had set us out to do at some point, and we knew where, when we were just trying to figure out in the meantime how we can, live out that passion where we were at. And there just seemed like every way we turned was just a closed door and a closed door and a closed door. And so we were kind of discouraged. We were wondering what our next step was. We were praying, well, Lord, do you have another church that we should go to that we can walk this out in? I had a desire to, get my credentials. I had a desire to, learn theology and do those things. And so I'm trying to figure that out. I was talking to my friend Cody Griggs, which most of you probably know. And I said, hey man, I'm interested in starting some learning. And he said, oh, well, you should do Berean, and you can do it through the Revival Center. Now, I had come up to the Revival Center twice when I was in college before the South Africa mission trip. Myself and my friend Garrison Strahan, who was in Montgomery at the time, we came up and we taught some dramas to the church, and had a great time doing it. So I was familiar with the church. I knew some different people. I'd known Pastor Jason for basically my whole life, and obviously I knew Cody from mission trips, and I knew various people. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'll need to reach out to Jason and talk about Berean. Let's see what that would look like. Well, we led a missions team, and we had gone to Costa Rica, and so I went the first week. And Gio stayed on to stay an extra week with her family. And we were at, Gio was in Costa Rica. I was at a young adult service. And at this young adult service, I would play the piano. And as I was in practice that moment after I'd come back from Costa Rica, I just felt something was different. And it wasn't that the practice was any different, it wasn't that the people were any different, it was that I was different. And I felt like the Lord was just giving this moment of release. And so I got back home and I was texting with Gio, and she said, I think I feel released. And I said, I just felt it too. And she said, would you be willing to move? And I said, well, I'm not trying to necessarily move, but if the Lord opened up an opportunity to move, yeah, I would be open. She said, okay. And I was like, do you know something I don't? She's like, no, I don't know. For some reason, I feel like we're going to move. Well, then the next day, so keep in mind all of these prayers we had, this desire for missions, this desire to learn, my job, I wanted a different job, all of these different things. And all of a sudden, I get a text the next day from Pastor Jason. And it was in the middle of work, and I glanced at it, I saw it, but I was in the middle I had a lot of customers coming in, and so I kind of looked at it and said, oh, and then I just kind of kept going. And I was actually at dinner with my parents. My parents had me over for dinner since I was there alone, since Gio was in Costa Rica, and so I was there. And as I was talking to my parents, I got kind of this feeling released. I said, oh, I actually got a text from, and I was talking about the potential for Berean and all that. And it's like, I actually got a text from Pastor Jason. And that started this journey of, we had this call, and all of a sudden, all these things started lining up, of the potential of doing Berean, of this position, of missions, of all of these things came together. And we knew that Revival Center was the place for us. And boy, has it ever been. I tell you, we have loved the past 4 years. It has been such a blessing of growth, of love for myself and Gio, and then now Olivia. It's just been such an amazing, amazing experience. And we really cherish our time here. You know, it's as a couple, we spent more time here than we have anywhere else. And so really for us as a family, Vincent is home. Vincent is home for us. And so it has been just a pleasure. And so I'm not going to take a ton of time today because I don't want to just stand up here and you listen to me monologue on and on for an hour. But I just have a few just thoughts, just things that I've learned, just little places of growth in my own life through serving here that I think maybe you guys could benefit from. So the first one, which I'm going to partake in, is always have a cup of coffee on hand. That's not really something I learned, but it's something I always do. We always have coffee flowing here. But the first one is that you can learn more than you think you can. You can learn more than you think. And so when we came here, I didn't want Pastor Jason to think he was hiring somebody that he wasn't. And we were newlyweds, and Pastor Jason kind of described the position at the time as Julie Smith was transitioning out. So it was, kind of more admin, but also the main part was media. And so, I knew, like, okay, the admin side, I can probably, I can probably handle. I'm not the most organized person in the world, but I'm also not disorganized. I give the award to most organized to my mother. She's like the most organized person in the world. So I'm not quite there, but I know my way around. I don't get things lost. And so I was like, oh, I can make that happen. But the media side, I was like, all right, Pastor Jason, just a heads up. I am not a polished media pastor. I was like, I don't want you, I want you to hire who you think you're hiring. I was like, but I know where Google is, and I know where YouTube is, and I know how to watch stuff and try my best. And so that's where, Pastor Jason obviously said, well, hey, I got you. Come on in. If you're willing to learn, let's do it. And so that's kind of started. And it's not like I came in and I had created a website, I created an app before, none of that. Pretty much everything that I have had the pleasure and the grace of God to do here, it was my first time doing it. I had never made a graphic before. I had made some videos, but it was like for class, it was never anything, like church related. I had done lights before, but it was on a different system. A completely different place. I had done ProPresenter, so that wasn't new. But building an app, doing a podcast, doing a YouTube live stream, it was all square one. I was just starting. And, if you had asked me, at that moment at the beginning, and, it really was at the beginning that all this brainstorming of what could potentially happen at the media ministry happened. Myself and Pastor Jason sat down. We were on the way either to or back from Orlando. I can't exactly remember which direction we were headed. But we just sat down and dreamt about, what is the potential of the media ministry here at Revival Center? What's the 3-year plan of Revival Center? And it was like, podcast and an app and new website updated and all of these things. And I said, okay, I'd only been here probably 2 months, maybe 3 at the time. And I was like, I want to take at least 6 months to kind of get familiar, know my way around, just make sure that I know what we have before I start changing anything. Well, then COVID happened. And the 3-year plan became as soon as possible, can we have everything now? So that was wild, but it made me realize that you can learn more than you think. If you put your mind to something when you're set in a situation, whether it be at your work, school, in your family, in any situation that we're at, you have the ability and the resources around you to do more than you realize. And the number one is the internet. Man, I could not have done any of this without YouTube videos of people who are way smarter than me, who figured it out way faster than me, guiding me along on how to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's such a beautiful and great resource that we can use. Aaron and I were talking before this live stream just about how, we look on YouTube and you can find just about anything, and that, he and I probably spend a lot of time on YouTube just looking up stuff, just curious, right? And that's the heart of learning, right? That is the heart of learning, is what my next kind of thing that I learned was just be constantly curious. And that's something that Pastor Jason always teaches us in the staff. Just be curious. Ask the question. Ask why, right? We see little kids and they'll say, what color is the sky, Daddy? Oh, well, it's blue. Well, why? Well, because, it reflects the ocean. But why? And we see this curiosity, this constant, this why question. And sometimes as adults, we sadly can end up killing that curiosity because we're like, stop asking me why, or we get to the point that the why, they ask a question that we don't know, and so we dismiss it. But I think sometimes that does ourselves a disservice, and it does the children a disservice, because there's this natural curiosity that God has birthed within us, that if we follow that, if we nurture it, because let's be honest, a lot of times in school, sometimes they don't like you to be curious. Some teachers are amazing and they promote it, and those are the teachers that we love, right? But there are some that are just like, here's what you need to know, just know it, don't ask me any more questions, right? And even the world can be like that. Even our bosses can be like that. Thank God Pastor Jason stokes that curiosity. He wants to know too. But we can be in situations where, you can ask that why question, and the person you ask really doesn't care. Well, don't let that discourage you from being curious. Go read a book about it. Go watch a documentary about it. Go watch a YouTube video about it. Be curious. Understand the why, because knowing that why is the foundation of accomplishing anything. If you want to accomplish anything at all in your life, you must be curious. You must know the why, because that why is going to make all the difference in the world. And so that's what I encourage. Be curious. Ask for that why. Look for it. Dive deep into it and see what can come of it. Because honestly, you never know. And that's the exciting part about curiosity, is that sometimes you never know what you're going to find. I think there's a Forrest Gump quote out there that could apply here. You know it. So I think one of these things that breeds curiosity the most, and this is a soapbox I like to get on, and for all the people close to me, you're probably going to tune out right here because I talk about it too much. But this is where reading comes into play. And the reason why I get so passionate about this is because when I came here, I wasn't really a reader, to be honest, which you might be surprising if you know how much I read now. But I was not. The year before I came here, I had read the most books I had ever read, which was 12, which is very good, right? I'm not saying that reading 12 books a year is bad. It's good, right? But I wasn't a voracious reader. I would read occasionally, and to be honest, I probably wouldn't have read 12 if not for Pastor Jason saying, hey, these John Maxwell books are 21 Laws of Leadership, 5 Levels of Leadership, and then a different author, but the 4 Disciplines of Execution. These are books that are a foundation of our leadership here. So if you want to go ahead and read them. So, I mean, those were 2. I didn't finish the 4 disciplines until after I came here, but those were 2 of the 12. So I might not even read 12 if not for that, right? And what really turned me on to reading and really set my course for where I am now, where I read a significant portion every day. Every night I'm trying to read something, is what happened in the pandemic, actually. And I had set a goal to read just a few more books than the year before. I'd set a goal to read 15. And I was reading a book by John Mark Comer. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I've read this book multiple times now. And it talks about hurry. It talks about the way that we approach life. It talks about kind of spiritual disciplines in there of that we neglect, like silence and solitude and spending time alone with the Lord, of how we can be distracted, how we can always be in a constant hurry, right? I think our world, hurry is a pretty big word there that describes it. And one part of that book that really just set the course for me, or understanding just how I used my time, was that I used a fraction of the time that most people spend watching TV, on their phone, playing video games. If they just used a fraction of that every single day, everyone could read 100 books a year. Now, before you say 100 books, are you insane? I'm not saying everybody should read 100 books. And I wasn't even saying at the time that I should read 100 books. But what it did say to me is, I probably spend way more time wasting than I do learning. And so it started on this journey of kind of cataloging how I spend my time. What do I spend my free time on? And everybody has a different amount, right? I have less free time now with a 1-year-old than I did before I had kids, right? Like, life changes. But the same sense is true, is that cultivating a time to read, or if you like audiobooks or podcasts, I'm not going to be legalistic on it has to be reading, although I do think reading has its advantages itself. But spending that intentional time reading will expand you in ways you never anticipated. See, the beauty of learning deep things is that it makes you a deep person. If you want to be a deep person, you have to spend time in deep things, right? Your Facebook feed is incredibly shallow. Your news feed is incredibly shallow. Your news channel is incredibly shallow. Nobody walks away from watching Fox News or CNN or NBC or whatever your drug of choice is, and walks away saying, wow, I feel like I have deepened as a person today. No, probably we have learned the bare minimum about something that really doesn't affect us, and we walk away mad, sad, discouraged, whatever you want to call it. That's never going to make us into a deep person. So if it's reading, if it's podcasts, if it's sitting down with a mentor, all of these things, take time every day to cultivate a deep life. And obviously, the number one in that is praying and reading your Bible. I think that goes without saying, but I did want to mention that's really where the depth of our life comes in, is really, truly digging deep into the Word of God. A few other things that I've learned is, number one, concentration is a superpower. Concentration is a superpower. Now, I will admit, there are times when I am not the best at concentrating. I think some of that has to do with the fact that I, like many people, have not had the greatest relationship with their cell phones. This little thing that buzzes in my pocket, and now we have smartwatches that they don't only buzz in our pocket, they buzz on our wrist. And so our attention can be fractured. But when you learn that concentrating and having a time where you are fully focused on one thing and one thing only, I can be the world's worst at multitasking, and when you multitask, sure, I get multiple things done, but I don't do either of them as fast or as good as I would have otherwise. And so I think that is one of the biggest things, and I think that anyone who does anything large learns how to truly set their minds to doing something. Another, and this is probably one of the biggest ones, is you can't do anything big alone. All of these things that has happened in the media ministry, the podcast, the influence, anything that has happened, none of that is a product of just me. Sure, I've had my hands on all of them because I'm the media pastor, right? Like, of course I had my hands on it. But I could not have done anything without other people. I think of Pastor Jason, obviously, first and foremost, as my leader, enabling me to be able to do that. I mean, how many of you know? I could have the greatest ideas in the world, but if he says no, it's a no, right? But Pastor Jason, he's always, how can I say yes? How can I do this and move this forward? Also, I mean, the other staff at the church, they've been so supportive and with us. I think of assistants that I've had in the past, Kyle Sherrill, Miss Cher Carpenter. I could not have gotten to this moment without them, and I'm forever grateful for people who come alongside and serve the vision and care for it and love it. And so, I mean, I can't thank them enough. And then the volunteers who make this happen. None of this, you cannot do any big thing in life. You cannot accomplish any goal in life truly that is a big goal alone. It's just impossible. We have to rid ourselves of that Lone Ranger attitude. And to be honest, that's one thing I had to learn, and I'm still learning how to do, because I was more so the person, I don't know, there are different types of people in the world, right? And maybe it's because I'm an only child that, you know, I just got used to being alone or whatever. But when I was growing up and I would be in high school or junior high, I was not the hooray group project kind of person. I was like, okay. Now, many times it just ended up because I did all the work anyway, because I was just kind of that person that I wanted a good grade, so we're getting a good grade. If that means I have to do all the work, we're getting a good grade. But that isn't really the way, like that may work for group projects in high school, but that doesn't work for advancing anything big in the kingdom of God. It just doesn't. We have to do this together. We have to come alongside each other, support one another, love one another, use gifts and talents that are different to truly accomplish it. I mean, we think about the greatest goal, I think, which is the Great Commission, right? That Jesus gave to his disciples, that he gives to us today, to go into all the world and make disciples of the nations, right? Baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them all that I've commanded you, right? Okay, that's a lot of work. And if I think that I can do that alone, I'm crazy. I'm crazy. If Paul couldn't do it alone, I definitely can't do it alone. And so we see that over and over again in the scriptures of needing and the need and the desire. We should not only understand that we can't do it alone, but we shouldn't want to do it alone. We should want other people to come alongside of us. We should want to share in the accomplishment of doing something big. We shouldn't want to hoard it for ourselves. We should want to share that. And so everything that you see here is not just because of me. And the last one is opportunity may not look like what you think it would, but you should take it anyway. And obviously, I caveat that with prayer and with seeking the will of God. But there are many times in life that we desire opportunity. We desire this next step, and we have in our minds what that next step looks like. Like, okay, I feel called to be a pastor. Let's say I'm a teenager, feel called to be a pastor, so I know my next step has to be I go to Bible college, and everybody who I know goes to Southeastern, so it must just be clear, obvious, I go to Southeastern. Now, not knocking Bible college or Southeastern, but is that? I mean, I know that seems like a logical step, but sometimes the Lord has different plans for everybody, different opportunities. And so I think about my, very long, winding way to the point where we're at now of going to do global work, is that it didn't look the way I originally thought it was going to look, right? When the Lord called us and guided us and said, this is where you're going to go, He didn't say, well, you're going to spend a year in Enterprise, and then you're going to spend 4 years at the Revival Center, and you're going to be the associate pastor, mainly over media, and then at this point you're going to go. The Lord didn't do any of that, right? If you would have told me several years ago, hey, you're going to be a media pastor, like me, a media pastor? I've never done anything in media. I had mostly been on the other end of being on worship teams, right? I mean, if you just said youth pastor, I'd be like, okay, I could maybe see that. A lot of times that's your first position in ministry, or, other thing, maybe even an assistant. Okay. But media pastor, I never would have thought it. But the thing is if I would have taken that same mindset of, well, I never would have thought of that as meaning, well, that must mean it's not the right opportunity or it's not the will of God, then I've never been in this moment. And so I want you to take that lesson that I've learned, that opportunity does not always look like you think. And I think sometimes we like to fit our future in this neat little box, right? Like, oh, my next step is this step, and my next step is this step, and it's my ladder on the way to success, Or we look at very successful people. Let's say we want to be a doctor, so we look at this very successful doctor, and so we say, okay, well, I need to mimic exactly their where they did, what they did, and by doing that, then I will be successful. Is that sometimes when we do that, we miss the beautiful and amazing opportunities that are set before us just because they weren't what we thought they would be. So whenever you see an opportunity come before you, before you say no, before you have any reaction, before you're like, I don't know about this, like it's not what I planned, it's not what I thought, ask the Lord. Say, Lord, is this the opportunity that you have for me? Is this the plan that you have? And you may be amazed at what the Lord does. I know I constantly am. And so I just want to end by saying thank you. By saying thank you to every person who is watching. You're the reason that we do what we do in the media ministry. You are the reason that we put out this content. It's not for our own benefit. It's not for our own gratification. I pray that it is to uplift you. It is to encourage you. It is to build you up. And I just want to say thank you to every single person who has invested in this media ministry with your time and with your care and with sharing and with so many other things. You're the reason we do it. And I just thank you for supporting myself and my team over these past 4 years. I know that the next media pastor that is here is going to take this way farther than I ever could. I believe that this ministry has gone as far as I could take it. But I know that the next person is going to take it even further. And so I'm excited to be on your side of the screen, watching influences as we move into this next season. And instead of becoming the one on this side, I become there with you, just taking it all in, learning, because I truly believe that the best is yet to come here. And so thank you for your continued support. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving my family. You've truly made a difference for us. You really, really have. I could stand here for the next hour and not thank you enough for what all you have done, for every compliment to a video, for every mention of how it touched you, for every bit of it. It made a difference, even when you weren't sure it did. It really did. And so we thank you guys so very much for watching today. We will not have, so just a heads up, we will not have a live stream next Tuesday, the day after Christmas. The offices are closed here at the church, and so won't be any Influence happening next Tuesday, but there will Tuesday, January 2nd. And so be on the lookout. They're the first of the year. We're going to be having some exciting things as we move into our Kingdom Builders month. We always love to focus on missions, and so you're going to be hearing from several different people about that. And then we're just excited for the new year. I'm excited to be there, right there with you, hanging out on the Influence, typing away. So hey, we love you guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple weeks. God bless.